Okay, so we are now on the GumBits Zoom chatting, and I'm so excited because this is my third time on the Zoom ever. And my guest today is Julie Moorcroft, who contacted me, I think, a couple years ago about the GumBits. And the reason I'm so excited is that we've never talked before. We communicate through social media. So, Julie, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here this morning. This is so neat. And it's so nice to finally put a face to the person that I've been talking to. Just love the product. Absolutely love it. And this year's very exciting. I'm starting, Grace, as you know, is my world champion and North American champion mare.
Let's back up for 1 minute because, you know, part of my role is that I don't, want to talk about GumBits right from the beginning. I really want to talk about you. And what I didn't tell people is that you are a world champion Western dressage, which is so cool because my first guest, Gil Merrick, was instrumental in setting up the Western dressage with USCF. I think it's probably been, 6 or 7 years.
6 years, yeah.
So I would love for you to tell us about you, what you do, how you got into the horses, and how you got into Western dressage, and now you're a big champion.
Well, I've been in horses since I was 10 years old. Started riding. Actually, I was very fortunate. My first riding instructor when I was 10 had British Horse Society certification, which back then would have been the equivalent of our level 3 coaching now. So she was a real stickler. I remember spending, 6 months on the lunch line riding this retired racehorse that had a canter like a drunken camel. And if you could ride him, you could ride anything. And that's kind of how it started. Dressage was always my love. The very first movie I ever saw in my whole life was The Miracle of the White Stallions. And then not long after that, a lady by the name of Inez Profficredo, who was competing for Canada, had a clinic at Southlands Riding Club, and they organized a group of all of us young kids to go and watch this lady ride her Grand Prix mare Gordina. And at that time, Inez was one of the only women competing in dressage. And I remember it was just the most magical experience. And at the end of her ride, she said, "Oh, does anyone want to sit on the horse?" And I'm like, me. So I actually got to sit on her horse and walk around the arena, and I was hooked for life. Have competed pretty much all of my life, mostly in English, and had aspirations to ride for Canada. Unfortunately, I was from a large family, lots of talent, no money. And we all know how political the upper levels can be in any of the equestrian sports. So that just wasn't to be. Luckily for me, I discovered I was as good a horse trainer as I was a competitor. And so when I moved out to Alberta, almost 30 years ago now, started training horses. I've trained one of the top rope horses in Canada using dressage, and had pretty much given up on the idea and the goal of being a champion until the Western dressage came along. And then I thought, what fun to take everything I knew about English dressage and apply it to my Western horses. So the first year I showed in Canada, my mare was the Canadian national champion.
Was this so the Western dressage sport that is rated now with USCF, was it the same timetable in Canada? Was this 6-7 years ago?
pretty much, I think. There were several people in Canada on that original board of the WDAA, the Western Dressage Association of America. And, you know, they brought the sport back to Canada. And I didn't hear about it initially. 2015 was the first time I started competing, and with a mare I've now sold. But she was Canadian national champion, and I had a customer's horse who was the reserve national champion. And then Miss Grace came along, and I bought her as a yearling sight unseen. You know, all the things we tell people never do. Don't buy a horse on the internet when you don't know the breeder, you've never seen anything but pictures. Grace turned out has just been as golden as her coat is. She has just been the most amazing experience for me in a lifetime of horses. Absolutely my heart horse. We went to the World Championships in 2016, and Grace went as my reserve horse. And she was literally on her 50th lifetime ride and won a world title.
Wow.
So she came home from that show as world and reserve world champion. And I was over the moon.
I bet.
My other mare did very well. She finished in the top 5. And to come down, what an experience to come down to the United States, to go to my first ever show that I'd traveled that far to. It was in Oklahoma, and to meet people you'd only ever seen in magazines. It was very intimidating, and I remember thinking, what am I doing here? And then I kind of thought, you know, those people all started at the beginning somewhere too. So someone has to win, so why not me? And it was wonderful. And we haven't looked back since.
Well, and I want to show, I should have printed these out, but you have the most gorgeous, I don't know where the camera is, but you have the most gorgeous photos that you sent me. And which horse was that I just
the one that you just showed? That's Grace. Backtracks Grace in gold.
That's Grace. Oh my goodness, they're so beautiful.
She's what they call a chocolate palomino, and very rare because her color is absolutely so rich and so amazing. And this time of year, her dapples are almost 3-dimensional. It's quite bizarre. They sort of float almost. So Grace has been quite amazing. In 2017, we went back to Worlds. She won a second world title and finished in a new division in the top 10, which I was very happy about. And the following year, I bred her to a wonderful full son of Doc's Hickory, a very famous stallion. And she had a filly who is SF, Kissed by Fire, and that should say it all in the name, boy, let me tell you.
How old is she now? Kissed by Fire.
Yeah, Spirit is 3 years old, and she'll be started in competing this year. And as talented as her mom, with a healthy dose of mischief thrown in for good measure. So very excited about bringing her onto the team this year. Shimmer, who is Grace's half sister, who I competed last year, suffered an injury, and she did recover, but she was not going to recover to a high level of performance. And I've since placed her in a wonderful home with an amazing breeder, and we're very excited to see her babies going forward. So Spirit will step into the slot left by Grace. And then I also have an amazing 2-year-old coming on, young filly called Putting on a Shine.
Oh, that's cute. Do you come up with these names?
Yeah, I like different names.
That's great.
You know, so Shine.
I'm curious to backtrack for a minute. So world champion, what level is that? Is it similar to the dressage levels, or what level is a world champion in Western?
They have similar levels. We have intro, which is basically a walk trot horse. Basic level is your walk trot canter. And then your levels 1 to 4 go up similar to what intermediate and pre-St. George. We don't have at the moment the equivalent of a Grand Prix test, but they're working on bringing that along. And there's always this conflict between, are we going to do what the English people do and ask the horses to piaffe and passage? Western horses don't usually do that. So this year, the WDA has brought in some tests with movements that you wouldn't see in an English test. For instance, asking for a side pass, which is like a complete lateral movement, as opposed to a half pass, which is lateral and forward. So, but we do flying changes, and they have asked for, in Western, it's called a rollback. So a rollback from a halt into a canter would be similar to a canter pirouette.
Wait, let me think about that. A rollback from a halt into a canter. So you're at a
Immediately.
dead halt, and then you pick up a canter and roll the other
Back.
direction. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
That's
it requires a great deal of strength in the hindquarters and a great deal of balance and self-carriage to execute correctly. You'll see lots of people in reining will kind of yank their horses around, but in the dressage, we're looking for a little bit more classical self-carriage, where the horse would actually sit down on its back end and use itself really well.
So you said that when you like from a walk and then you pick up a canter, so that, like you said, that's almost like being in a schooling canter pirouette, right?
Yes.
So you pick
Yes.
up, turn, and so do you keep turning, or you turn and then move off from there?
They're usually 180-degree turn.
Okay.
And then you would carry on. So, and they're done on the quarter line, so you can't use the wall to support yourself. It's very good, actually. So for instance, you might come down the quarter line on a right lead canter, do a stop and do your turn to the left, and then proceed on a left lead canter back in the direction that you came from. And you would be judged on how well that horse stopped. Did it stop in balance without a gaping mouth? Did it sit down and turn and pick up the correct lead and carry on, you know, in a collected and balanced manner, or did it rush off? So judged a lot the same way. In the lower levels, the difficulty is we have a lot of American judges who are used to judging English dressage. And I guess if I could make any criticism, it's that we see them asking for much more of a headset in the lower levels than technically I think those horses should have.
Right.
So it's always,
I'm sure that's a big discussion internationally that we don't even want to get into. But, you know, talking about that, and then circling back around to the GumBits, it's interesting you say that, because I have a lot of eventers that use the GumBits because they're so used to going cross country, full speed. All of a sudden they have to get into the box with a lot of them are thoroughbreds, I believe. Yes. And now they want them to kind of go round and through and over their back, and the chewing with the GumBits really helps them relax. So, you know, you contacted me, has it been 2 years or 3 years? 2 years? 3 years. 3 years. I know. I feel horrible that we're just now meeting for the first time, but I know that we've watched each other, and I know that you've been a very huge promoter of the GumBits. And how did you become aware of it, and why did you use GumBits? Well, interestingly enough, I had done a clinic with one of the guys from Marcus Dressage and follow them. And at one of the shows, they commented about they were giving their horse some GumBits. And so I got in touch with Dave, and I said, "What's GumBits?"
And he said, chewing gum for horses. And I said, really? Like, talk to me about this. So I'd like to think that if we're going to be horse people of the best kind, we need to keep an open mind about not only what we can learn from other disciplines, but the products that are out there that can help us in our own discipline. I have other sponsors, and I never promote products that I don't personally use in the barn all the time. So I got in touch with you and asked if by chance you would consider sponsoring a Western dressage rider. And we had done very well up to that point. We've done spectacularly well this last year, with Grace winning 5 North American titles and 2 reserve titles. I was like over the moon, and top 3 at Worlds. Did get a message back that you were busy, you'd get back to me, and then you did, and said, oh my God, I'm so sorry, and you sent me some product to use, and it's just been amazing. Grace is the fussiest thing in the world about new stuff, so I had to do a bit of convincing. But where I found it incredibly helpful, a lot of my Western dressage schooling I do in English tack, because that's where I started. And we were starting Grace in the double bridle, and she was not accepting her curb bit at all. And when I started using GumBits, before I put the bridle on and then bridling her, she would be happily chomping away. And I think she came to realize that, you know, she wasn't going to die if she had 2 bits in her mouth. And it's been just amazing.
That's
and
great.
The other thing I find amusing is, I'm sure you're aware that the FEI just brought in a rule that the people who were smearing the sides of their horses' faces with marshmallow.
Is it soap or marshmallow?
It was marshmallow goo to make it look
Oh.
like they were chewing. You know, that practice has been banned. And honestly, I think GumBits are the answer, because the horses just love them. And Spirit Grace's daughter was bridled and saddled last year, and bridling her was quite a process until I started giving her a handful of GumBits, and then she'd get so busy chewing the GumBits, suddenly the bit wasn't an issue. So now the young horses are hunting them.
Oh, that's great. Well, just to clarify to everybody, the GumBits isn't like putting white or anything.
No, not at all.
All GumBits is, and in fact, hold on, I think I have some here. GumBits are just like beeswax and sugar. So when the horses start chewing, they start to salivate, and then they get the big frothy foam of salivation. So that's what
it isn't just the foam though, Shireen. I think what it does is it's very much encouraging them to chew and to relax their jaws. And when they do that and relax their jaws and relax their gullet, then you're getting a horse that's so much prettier to look at and so much calmer on their bridle, because they're content in their mouth. And to me, that's the huge benefit. It isn't just the chewing, it's the fact that through that product, I can get my horses to just relax their jaws, especially the youngsters when they're not sure what a bit's for, and you're asking them to do, you know, stuff they're not sure about. You know, the ability to have them relaxed and soft in their mouth and their jaws, just amazing. Just love it.
I don't know if people can see, but so basically it's just like, I like to say it's like the when I was a kid. Oh yes, Tic Tacs, or what were the little red things we used to always eat as a kid? The oh gosh, I'm being
I know what you mean, can't think of the name.
Right, it's like those red hots is what it is, but so they're just like, you know, just like little Tic Tacs, exactly. And they're, you know, because it's just beeswax and sugar, then obviously it's not a banned substance. So but I also wanted to clarify, I forgot, so you reminded me it's David Marcus who,
Yes.
oh gosh, I met David, I think 2014 in Wellington. And by 2014, was already crowned Canadian Olympian and
Yes.
had moved to Florida. And I think that is so cool that he goes back to Canada regularly and does clinics. And was it dressage primarily, or was it a Western event, or?
It's very interesting question. He actually came to do a clinic at an equestrian fair called the Main Event up here. And I believe you have them down in the States as well, or at least we did before COVID. I was so happy to talk to him because so many of the pure dressage instructors won't help the Western riders. And, you know, I've said to several of them, dressage is dressage. It just means to train your horse. You dressage jumpers, you dressage barrel horses, whatever. And David was one of the first instructors that I met who was so encouraging, gave me a great tip with my mare because I was having a particular issue with canter, made a wonderful suggestion. I was very upset because the organizers would not allow me to ride with him because I was a Western dressage rider and not an English dressage rider. Happy to say there's other instructors. I did a clinic with Ingrid Klemke, who came out to Vancouver.
Oh, wow, you're so lucky.
Yeah, audited that clinic. I wanted to bring a horse, but she did the clinic in March, and unfortunately, travel from Alberta to BC in March through the mountains is very problematic, and it wasn't worth the risk. But interestingly enough, I had met Ingrid's father when I was a very young rider,
Dr. Reiner Klemke.
Dr. Reiner Klemke, and audited a clinic with him and Mrs. Klemke, and was able to show Ingrid a picture that was taken of her dad, and I had some pictures taken with her, and it was lovely to meet her.
That is so neat that you got to meet him. I'm pretty much in awe. He is without a doubt one of the biggest masters in the world, and that you got to meet him and ride with him, and then years later got to ride with his daughter. I sponsored one of her clinics years ago, and I think it was in Ocala. It was years and years ago, and someone called and asked if I would sponsor, and I did, and I didn't get to go, but that is really neat. And wasn't she going to do the Olympics in 2 disciplines?
Yes, and unfortunately, Francisca's, her dressage horse, got injured, and she was forced to withdraw him. Stunning stallion. Interestingly enough, Shannon Dueck's up and coming dressage mare is out of that stallion, or by that stallion. You know, she is. I rode with Shannon and her mom when we were all little kids in BC, and Shannon's coming home to BC to do a clinic this year, and I'm hoping the roads will let me take Grace and go and participate. And again, she's one of the few English dressage and clinicians who is more than willing to help.
I think, we're going back many years. I started the GumBits, oh gosh, I don't even know, 15, 17 years ago or something like that. But I do recall that Shannon was one of the Canadians, Olympians that uses the GumBits. I haven't been fortunate enough to meet her, but Canada is such a huge market for me, and it's so difficult to import products through the border there. But I know that Running Fox carries GumBits. And how did you find it? Do you buy it from the States?
Well, the only place that is anywhere close to me in Alberta is actually about 4.5 hours north of me. And so the only thing I can do is either order and have them ship, or, you know, if I happen to be going up to Edmonton, stop on the way up or the way back and buy product.
Well, I did actually work with a distributor in Canada. This was about, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, to try to register and go through the Canadian government, which I did everything. I had put all the labels in French, and oh wow, it was so bureaucratic. And finally we just had to give up. But there's another company too that sells it in Canada. I think it's Victoria. I just want to make sure I get it right.
Photo bombing.
But and where exactly are you in Canada? I'm just curious.
I'm in about 20 minutes south of Calgary, Alberta.
Okay. Yes, it's Victoria Saddlery. I knew I had that right. And let me see where if I can find where they are located. I think they're located on the west side of Canada. So
I think they're in BC.
But I just you know, to have you, and you know, to be a Canadian and to be a world dressage, Western dressage, especially after I just had Gil speak with all of us. It's just, I'm so excited to have met you or to meet you today. And I really want to keep in touch, and send us some videos, post some videos. I know your sister had to show you how to set up the Zoom, but I want to know, well, a couple things. First of all, I think in your heart, if you want to be a champion, you're gonna be a champion. So maybe it didn't happen in the way that you thought, making an Olympic team, like you mentioned, growing up with your family. But then, you know, who would have thought this new sport of Western dressage, and here you are, a world champion. And it does kind of remind me of my friend Gil, because he told me, and he did dressage as well. And he he ran the USCF high performance for years. But he told me that he always wanted to go to the Olympics too. And what I thought was interesting is, well, he did go to the Olympics because he was the team chef to keep in 2008. And I always tell my daughter, I always say, okay, if you pray for something and you want something, you know, just be clear. I just wonder if Gil said whether he wanted to be at the Olympics or he wanted to ride at the Olympics. But here you are, and you wanted to be a champion, and you clearly are a champion.
Oh, thanks. It was so unexpected, you know, but I think it's a life lesson about never giving up on your dream. I mean, my whole life I dreamed about doing that. The only really sadness in the whole thing for me was back in 2017 or 2016, actually, when we went. The championships were in September in Oklahoma. In January, my mom had a heart attack and was in hospital. And in March, I found out that I had won the Canadian national title and made the decision to go to Worlds, and went to tell my mom, and she passed away the day before I had a chance to tell her. So I was quite heartbroken about that.
But
But
I'm
I swear
sure,
to God, she was riding on my shoulder the whole way.
I'm sure she knew. I am sure she knew that you are a world champion, and I'm so excited to have you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much for asking me, and thanks for sponsoring us and having such a great product. I'm definitely trying to get some videos with the young horses when we start them as soon as the weather's good.
Oh, I always wondered if someone was going to deliver something while I was doing a Zoom, and I ordered a new computer, so I'm a little nervous that it's going to get stolen off my front porch.
No
But
kidding.
yeah, but like I said, thank you for being you and for reaching out and being so supportive of me and such a busy time of my life, with my daughter. I try to spend a lot of time with her. And I think, there's a comment that you made about the dressage and the training. And what I'm finding with the hunters and the jumpers, it's dressage. I sometimes I hate that it's even tagged dressage because it's basic riding, as we all
Yep.
know. And you've done that, and I'm so impressed that you bring along young horses, because that's probably the most difficult, and to use my GumBits is such an honor, for real.
Thanks so much. I'm just, like I said earlier, absolutely thrilled with the product, and the fact that the young horses would be hunting their bits because they're looking for their GumBits treat is just amazing. And they're
We
so
do
handy
it in
in the barn.
hunters. We shake. Actually, I should have a bottle with me, but we shake.
Yeah.
We shake the GumBits for the hunters, and we're doing pictures, and they do their ears forward, and we get the best pictures. But
Yes.
Thank you again, and we'll circle back around and
Oh,
follow
you
up
bet.
some more.
We'll keep you posted how it's going.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.